You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Brie and Thais, episode 51. Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Brie Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
a movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
Because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Yo, 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 yo.
Hey, hey.
Thais Sky, and that is Brie Seeley. We are two women who sit in closets and talk about amazing, impactful shit. Welcome. Welcome to our podcast.
That was a good opening.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, ever since you mentioned in our last episode how new people are listening in every time, then I feel like I now have to create a more epic experience for these people.
It is true. We don't want to welcome people into their first episode sounding terrible or being...
Exactly. What were we been thinking all this time?
I know. We need to honor all the new people that are on this episode that if you've never heard us talk before.
If you've never heard us talk before, I'm the one that makes up a lot of words and I have a little bit of an accent because I'm from Brazil. And Brie Seeley is a little bit more eloquent than me. And she's a little bit more, I'm a little more verbose and she's a little bit more succinct. And together we make the women of the Amplify Collective.
Fact. So before we start chatting.
Yes, we have an event. We have an event happening tomorrow. Aloe Yoga, Beverly Hills, yoga, unnetworking, mixer, discounts, champagne. All of the most amazing things you can imagine in one evening. We are detoxing and then we are retoxing, and it's going to be a really beautiful experience.
And there will also be water for those of us that are not retoxing.
Yes. So there are tickets, I think a few. If not, there's just a handful of tickets still left. You can learn more on our website, theamplifycollective.com. Under the events tab, you'll find all of the information. If you're not in Los Angeles, I am so sorry for your loss. My heart goes out to you. I'm just kidding. And that's it. That's all we've got in terms of announcement.
Fabulous. So let's get into talking. So today we are talking to a beautiful, beautiful soul about her life and her journey of amplification. And one of the things that she brings up is this concept of identity. And so Thais and I wanted to jam on this idea a little bit before we bring her.
Her story is amazing, so you have to listen to her telling the story, but essentially there was a little bit of paralyzation going on, and her identity and her looks and who she thought she was changed through that experience. And so we felt it to be very important to take a moment and really talk about the dangers of identity, as well as the inevitabilities of identity and kind of everything in between. And there's a lot that we can dive in here, and I know that this is a very broad topic, but we're going to attempt to make this happen anyway.
Yeah. So the whole idea of not attaching your identity to something outside of you is that we don't get to control or change or impact technically any of the things outside of us. Right? So if something happens then to the things outside of us, then all of a sudden what our identity is tied to is taken away, and we go through this deep, intense mourning and, just dark night of the soul, all the things.
Yeah.
And so this is a conversation I've been having a lot lately, is what does it look like to stop attaching your worth, your value, your identity, all these things to external situations, circumstances, people, experiences, titles, etc.
An example is an Olympic skier. In order to become an Olympic skier, you have to spend so much time and effort and energy cultivating a craft. And it's very easy especially if you love it, which most of them do, or else they wouldn't be willing to spend so much time, energy, and money unsaid craft. They love it, and so it's very easy to identify themselves as a skier and to find a lot of joy and worth from their skiing. And while on one hand there is literally nothing wrong with deriving joy from an activity, it becomes a little bit dangerous when you break a leg, and then you are in this cycle of, well, then who the fuck am I? Because you've placed so much of your who you are into this activity. And so this happens on a more nuanced level in all of our lives on a consistent basis. And this is one of the reasons why Bree and I created a networking as an opportunity for women to come together and not talk about what they do, but rather who they are, is because when we attach too much value into what we do, we literally close off the opportunity for genuine connection.
And as things are changing in, our society, so a lot of us really do tie ourselves so heavily to our job titles,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
why Thais and I have taken it out of the equation, because think about it, that's, then you say you can't do that job anymore. Your whole life is turned upside down, because if you can't do that job, and that's everything about who you introduce yourself as in the world or how you show up in the world, then essentially you have nothing then, right?
Yeah. So there's this beautiful quote. So Humans of New York is one of my favorite things of all time. And this guy, Brandon, goes around and takes pictures of people in New York and asks these amazing questions. And we don't know what the question is, we just hear the answer. And he's really humanizing people and bringing awareness to people that you never really hear about. Anyway, so he got asked to go to the Met Gala and interview celebrities, which is something he does not do. But he did a really good job, and he interviewed a singer, and I want to share what she wrote because this is kind of the bedrock for this conversation. So she's a very famous pop singer, and she goes, I feel like I'm just starting, but I think I'd be fine if it all went away. I get that from my mother. From the moment I started singing, she always reminded me that all of this was a privilege and could be taken away at any moment. So singing is not how I define myself. I try to keep my identity rooted in my friendships and in my faith. And I love that so much. And it's made me think so much of how I've been rooting my value and my identity as an entrepreneur without even being conscious of it. Uh, and being a coach and a speaker and a teacher and all those things. And I've been rooting my identity in those things. And the reason why this becomes problematic is the minute I don't get the reception that I want, right? The minute I don't get a sold out event, or I don't have a million people signing up for something, or I put something out into the world and no one buys it. If I identify myself and I place value on being an entrepreneur, being a coach or whatever, it is inherently needing that validation of people to buy my stuff in order for me to feel like a good person. And so I've been really asking myself, like, wow, like based on this quote, being an entrepreneur, being a coach, being a teacher, it's a privilege. It is a radical privilege that I get to do this, and it could be taken away at any moment. It has been taken away at certain points in my life in the past. So, what if instead I were to reprogram myself and recalibrate my identity on something much, much deeper and beyond what I do? And then I thought, oh my gosh, I need to talk about this with Bree, because the irony is we lead a community. And in our community, we tell people not to identify themselves by what they do. And here I am doing that very thing. And
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that I was doing it.
I mean, this kind of goes to why I started introducing myself as an inspirational woman, because, I went through the whole transition of letting go of my fashion brand and being that person in the world, and it was devastating, of like, who am I if I'm not this one thing? And so I love this concept of being an inspirational woman, because I can inspire someone by smiling at them on the street when I pass them. I can inspire someone, the person checking me out at the grocery store, by making eye contact and really seeing them, and communicating with them in a really connected way. Like, I can be an inspirational woman in every moment of every day, regardless of whether or not I'm with a client or writing something or recording a podcast, or, all these different things.
Yeah. Well, and to add a little bit more complication to the conversation, because why not? In at the same time, our identity can create such freedom and a sense of liberation. And I say this because I'm thinking about what it means to be a woman. And I know that there are so many people born on this planet who are not born in the body of a woman. And all they want is to be able to identify themselves and be perceived and like be a woman.
Yeah.
And so they go through these, intense procedures, physically and also emotionally, in order to then step into the identity of being a woman that they felt like they were at the very beginning, right? Since birth, they felt like they were being born in the wrong body. And so being able to then claim and identify and be open and say, I am a woman or I'm a man, depending if you are the reverse, right? It must feel like such a liberation, like such a sense of understanding of who I am. So, really, identity is a way in which we understand ourselves and understand our role in the world. And so, to a certain extent, it can actually be very beautiful, to identify ourselves as a gender, or to identify ourselves as non-gender, or to identify ourselves as a certain nationality, or to not identify ourselves. Like, I feel like on some level, identity gives us a sense of purpose, a sense of community, a sense of, who we are. But then on the other side of the spectrum, if gone too far, too much identity and too much attachment to identity creates crisis and war, and it makes me make other people an enemy in a much easier way. Because if they are not like me and I'm so identified as me, then they must be bad and wrong.
Yeah, I mean, identity can be
Yeah.
very divisive. Um, I know that that's a big conversation in the child-free community.
Oh, yes. I was hoping that you would bring this up and we could talk about this. So, a little background. Brie
It's
is
fixed. She's fixed.
she is fixed, just like her two cats. No, not just like it. I'm just kidding. Uh,
Well, they're girls too, so I guess technically, do you spay or neuter a girl cat? I don't know. All
you
3 of us are. Whatever it is, we all are. All 3 of us.
So she made that decision at a very early age, but got a lot of resistance from the medical industry, telling her that she would eventually change her mind and that they wouldn't do the procedure until, how old were you? 28, 27?
I finally stuck my foot in the mud at 29
Mm,
and just took the situation in my own hands.
yeah. Okay, well, you didn't take it
Well, not
fully literally.
literally. I took the situation into my own hands in that I stopped waiting for someone to give me permission to go see the specialist, and I just fucking called them and booked my own appointment.
Right. So yeah, so let's talk about it, because so much of the identity of being a woman is connected to our identity of being a mother. And yet we are our entire society really is transitioning to a conversation where more and more women are choosing not to have children, and it's caused a moral dilemma, I feel like, because people are like, well, you're a woman, you have to have babies and you have to love babies. That's another one. You not only have to have them, you have to love them, you have to be a good mother, you have to sacrifice everything for them while simultaneously having it all and having a career. And that places a lot of pressure on just one identity of being a woman.
I just read an article this morning by a woman it was called "I Don't Love Being a Mom."
Yep.
I almost shared it with you, but then I didn't.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen those around. There are more and more women being open to the fact that they regret having children. And it's not that maybe they don't necessarily love their children. I mean, I feel like it's that love is kind of inevitable. It's
Yeah,
just that.
this woman's article said she doesn't love being a mom. She loves her children, but she
Right.
does not love being a mom.
Right. And that's such a rebellious statement. We're supposed to love them and love being a mom. So anyway, tell us a little bit more about this identity and you shifting away and being, or shifting away from the traditional concepts of women and motherhood and choosing to be child free.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because this Thaisa asked me earlier if I how I like changed into or got rid of that identity of being a mom, and for me it's interesting because I've never had that identity. I guess motherhood has always had a different definition for me. It's not about caring for a child that I've birthed. Like I mom my clients. I mom you. I mom my cats. I mom my mom. Like seriously, I think that this it's for me, it's more about the idea of nurturing and
Mm.
being that space for other people, supporting them or not supporting them or holding space or, for my cats scooping up their poop, it's just like it's all
Well, and what's great is I think what you're illustrating is that the traditional idea of like being child free is only radical because it goes against the traditional identity of women. If there was never an association with women and necessarily equaling motherhood, then this wouldn't be such a radical act. And so, again, we're just illustrating how being so connected to an identity as a society, as a culture, can be inherently damaging to women on an individual level because if you don't have a strong enough sense of will and if you weren't in the right space, Brie could very much have been born, 100 years ago and been forced due to societal expectation to have 10 million children and be a stay-at-home mom.
actually, I probably would have just been hospitalized. They probably just would have put me in the crazy
You're
hospital. Be
hilarious.
like, "This one's too much. We can't handle her. Just put
Oh
her
my
away.
god,
Put her
that's
away."
amazing. uh, and so we have to look at how our identification and obsession with identity of what it looks like to be man and women is literally keeping millions of people stuck in genders that they don't identify themselves with or in sexual orientations they don't identify themselves with careers they don't identify themselves with relationships. It just goes on and on and on. And yeah, it's really, I think this is really important on a global level to really look at how we may be perpetuating certain identities by expecting people to live up to those identities
Yeah,
and
totally. I mean,
what that looks
this
like.
this I feel like even goes into the like Grace and Frankie conversation, of the and even though it's a quote unquote fictional television show, the two men who were married to them for what,
Well,
30
you have to
40
back
years.
up and like share what Grace and Frankie is.
Well, so okay, so Grace and Frankie is a Netflix show. If you guys haven't watched it, it's hilarious. I have not yet watched season 3, but it
Two
is
white
really
ladies.
good. 2 like 50, 60-year-old white
70.
ladies.
They're 70.
70? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So anyways, so their husbands, have been in love with one another for, like, 30 years,
Hmm.
and as they're getting ready to retire, the 2 husbands sit down the 2 wives and let them know that they're gay and that they're divorcing them and that the 2 men are gonna get married.
Yeah.
And, Thais and I were talking about it. That was and probably still is incredibly common for, people to have to deny their sexual
Oh yeah.
preferences
Yeah.
based on the expectations of other people.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
other people think your identity should look because you were born in a certain body or a certain way or blah, 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 blah.
And that's certainly not to quote unquote shame people who do
Mm-mm.
identify themselves as women, or I am a cis gendered woman, which means I identify myself with the gender that I was born with, and I am a heterosexual, which means I am attracted to men. And that's just, so there's no shame there. Like, that's how I was born and that's what I choose, and I am very happy in that choice. And some people aren't born that way and aren't happy in what they were given, and they also have that choice, and we need to give them the freedom to have that choice too. And one thing that um, is important to note is that however way you may be feeling, um, what am I trying to say, that your how rigid and judgmental you are of other people is an indication of how attached you are to your own identity. And so if you're really judgmental of, let's say, gay people, there's probably some really rigid attachment identifying issue, like identification issues uh, within you, you know? That's just a
So
connection I just put together on the spot. So you can affirm for me that I'm right. That'd be
So
great.
how do people start loosening this heavy, heavy grip that we all have on all of these identity things of I am this and I am that and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, so I think one of the cool ways we can start to do this is to get out of our vibe attracts our tribe shit and start being in the same group of people that are the same as us, and really start to get involved with, create friendships with people of different race, different ethnicities, different gender, different background. The more that we can surround ourselves and with just a diverse cast, a diverse group of people, of experiences, of whatever, I think that that will give us a more open mindedness to the spectrum that is the human condition. I feel like the people who are most racist, most sexist, right, like most narrow minded are people who are not very much exposed to different points of view and different types of people, you know? And so we can combat this by, you know, being more open. And so I would say, like, go travel, but not everyone has the luxury of fucking picking up and traveling the world for a year.
So I have a tip. I am in this period right now of growth and all this stuff, and I've been kind of wanting to shift up my routine and get a change of scenery and all these things. And so I literally right before we got on here just went on Eventbrite and just searched for events happening in my area. Events where I won't know anyone at these events, you know,
Mm,
creativity events, workshops, meditation stuff, like yoga things. There's free events happening all over your city, I would guess, on a regular basis, assuming you live in a booming metropolis. If not, might take a little bit more planning, but go on Eventbrite and just search for what events are happening in your area. Get around some people you wouldn't normally get around.
yeah.
Experience some things you wouldn't normally experience.
Yeah, like surround yourself with old people, you know, quote unquote old people. Like go to like a volunteer nursing home for a day and hang out with people in their 80s and 90s. I mean, it's just, I think it brings us perspective. You know, we will continue to recreate history until we start to look at history and learn from history and address it. You know, I just feel like we live in such a cool planet where, because of the online world, we can access people from all over the world. And I think it's a real detriment to ourselves if we don't do it. So I love that tip. Um, and yeah, surround yourself. Like, you don't have to become like friends and sing kumbaya with every different race in order for you to feel like a good person. It's just, if you notice yourself in your group and it's all white chicks, you know, you're probably not getting a diverse sense of what it looks like to live in this very complicated, complex world. And again, that's not to say then go get a token black friend. It's just saying, okay, anyway, you know what I'm saying. Okay, so another tip that I had is to really, really ask yourself, like, what you really identify yourself with as, and is that, what is that closing you off to? You know, as you identify yourself as an American, what does that mean? And what are you closed off to? You know, by identifying yourself as an American, what are you making that mean about people who aren't Americans? And maybe it means nothing, you know, and then that's great. That means you don't have a trigger, you don't have an attachment to being an American. But if, you know, America were to burn down tomorrow and this is your entire identity, then that would create some chaos in your life. So yeah, so I would spend some time and really investigate our different identities and what you make that mean about you as a person, et cetera, et cetera.
I was just having a conversation last week with someone, and we both were saying how men and women alike, we all just need to be a little more human. We need to learn to be a little more human.
Yeah.
Like, just without all the titles, without all the labels, without all the things, and just be humans and think of other people as humans. And we're all humans on this human journey,
Oh,
being human.
the number one
And
tip that Brie and I always have, and we talk about this all the time,
we
is
do.
yeah, number one tip to looking at your identity is when you're meeting someone new, don't ask them what they do
Hmm.
because they're just stereotyping people. So instead, ask them different questions. What are you passionate about? You know, what's going on in your life? What are you celebrating? What are your wins? You know, what's going on? You know, tell me about your family. Tell me about where you're from. Tell me about your childhood. I don't know anything other than that very
Yeah.
labeling question.
If you are in the Be Amplified community, you will notice that that's always, we've been welcoming all of our new members, and we always ask, like, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? That's like
Yeah,
our question.
yeah.
We don't like to ask people what they do because, you know, say someone sells Amway and I had bad experience with Amway ones, I'm going to be like,
That
oh,
is
this
so
person's in our group.
specific.
Well, because I literally don't know anyone that sells Amway. And I think it's kind of, does Amway even still exist? I
My
don't know.
parents used to sell Amway.
So did mine.
All Amway. Oh my God, that is so cool.
We're meant to be soul sisters.
We were clearly meant to be soul sisters. All right, let's bring on Renee. She has some really amazing
Yes.
insights
Yes.
on this
On
topic.
identity.
Yes. All right, let's
Cool.
do it.
All right, amplifiers. I'm so excited for this week's guest. Renee Area is a brain tumor survivor, international award-winning speaker, transformationalist, and soul provocateur. After having, right? After having massive brain surgery in 2004 and suffering from full right-sided facial paralysis, Renee was blessed to miraculously heal herself physically, mentally, and emotionally. She now speaks around the world, delivering her signature talk called Flip Your Flaws and Find Your Freedom, through which she helps others live a life of greater meaning through embracing their unique gifts, quirks, and flaws. Flip Your Flaws is featured in the documentary movie Embrace, currently available on iTunes. She is also the co-founder and CEO of Rare Media and Rare Women, showcasing meaningful messages from creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs. Rare helps you tell your best story and believes that media can be both beautiful and effective. Renee also believes in unicorns. Duh.
That's the most amazing ending to a bio ever. Welcome, Renee, to Be Amplified, the podcast.
Thank you, ladies. I love both of your energy so much. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. So we like to start off our podcast asking the same question, which is, what does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
Which day of the week?
Let's start with today.
Oh, dear. You know, actually, it just automatically made me wonder. I wonder if someone thinks the same thing every day about what makes them feel amplified, because honestly, for me, it's such a moment by moment experience. Today, what is allowing me to feel amplified is connection. And I'm probably supposing that connection is at the foundation of my amplified life most of the time. And I would say, in addition to that, it mostly is reliant upon the way that I am feeling about myself and the person that I'm being. You know, I feel very amplified if I am in full alignment, you know, with my truth and with who I really am.
And how was that journey for you of kind of finding that sense of who you are? Because I feel like so many people are so lost in what that even looks like.
Yeah, you know, I probably have a little bit of a different answer. I'm imagining, so you guys let me know, you know, based upon other people's answers. To be honest with you, like as Lady Gaga says with her foundation, I literally think that I was born this way. You know, there are plenty of other areas in my life where I have been greatly challenged. My health, you know, really being one of those areas. The personal identity piece, I think I really just came in as a very strong soul who was quite independent. And, you know, my mom told me from a young age, I would, you know, come out and socialize and kind of be a leader amongst my friends, but I would equally retreat away into my own worlds. And I think just there in my own worlds from a young age, I think I must have had a lot of conversations with myself, you know, when I was young, just deep inquiries. And so, you know what, though, I think for me, one of my greatest challenges with resiliency has been going intense challenges, including life and death challenges, and not losing my character and not losing my sense of self. So I think rather than having a story of, you know, event X or event Y happened, and then all of a sudden I knew, you know, who I am, mine is more, I really kind of came in with that identity and then had all of these challenging things happen and had to really wrestle with not losing myself amongst the darkness.
Talk more about that, because I feel like that is something that a lot of women especially struggle with. And I know, you know, you were in the modeling industry, which is very much about losing your identity. and objectifying women and things like that. So I'd love to know more about how you developed that resiliency, especially in those circumstances which are not supported for, supporting for women to have resiliency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my initial draw went to the modeling agency when this started when I was age 12. I think Bree, as you know, that's when I very first started modeling in Indiana when I was age 12. I personally really saw it as an expressive outlet. Um, I didn't really come into that industry from the perspective of, look at me, I'm beautiful, or I want to be here so that I can be acknowledged as being beautiful. I went in there with a perspective of, I go to school every day. I don't feel fulfilled there. I wasn't exposed to a lot of art. I was in Catholic schools until I was in 8th grade. And for me, the modeling agency was really kind of a breakaway from boredom, if you will. I found one of my very first modeling photo that I ever took. I actually found it, I think like 6 months ago or something. And I had forgotten, but I actually came up with an alias name at age 12, and my name was Raytel. And I looked like I was 25 when I was 12 years old, and I have this name, Raytel. So I think I was, really kind of playing around with this notion of expression. So for me, again, I think it was a little bit different of a relationship, that I had with the modeling agent, with the modeling industry. But what I can say is there were certainly several women around me in the runway agency work and also in like the print modeling work that seemed to have quite an obsessive nature with self and with identifying who they were as the person that was in the photo or the person that was showing up to do the job. And I can only imagine that is extremely, that can really split you, on a soul level, almost when you only feel like yourself certain amounts of the time and in certain environments and certain situations. So I didn't experience that per se with the modeling agency, but I can relate to you my story with after having massive brain surgery and waking up to facial paralysis, where I felt like the person that I was seeing in the mirror was not who I was. When I wanted to smile, when I wanted to express, and I truly felt happy, and I would look at myself in the mirror and I would just look completely distorted and confused, and people couldn't figure out what was going on with me and what emotion I was feeling. And because of what I was seeing on the outside, it almost started confusing me about how I felt. And then inherently, it for a while confused me about my own identity.
Well, I feel like our identity, or I should say our sense of self, is so tied to our physical appearance and so tied, and let's add just another layer of kind of the patriarchal mindset that we live in, where our women are already naturally meant to be objectified, and we're meant to try to find our identity through our body. So our society has that pressure, right? But then it's also very easy for us to identify and attach ourselves to our body weights or how we look. And so I'm so grateful that you're bringing this up, and I would love for you to share a little bit more about what that journey was like for you.
Yeah, thank you for asking, because I think it's very important. I think one of the things that I shared at the beginning, which is this notion of your own personal world. And I was making a reference to being young and kind of retreating and having my own invisible, magic world, if you will. I think when you become an adult, it's equally as, maybe sometimes even more so, important to have your own invisible magic world that really is your spiritual place, where you go to know who you are beyond anything that is in the physical world. For me, that's meditation. And that started for me in my early 20s, when I moved from Indiana out to California, and just so happened to kind of meet the right people at the right time. And I was living very close to Encinitas in California, which is kind of the homeland of Paramahansa Yogananda, who founded the Self Realization Fellowship Center, and really brought Kriya Yoga from India, over to the Western world. So, whenever I was introduced to meditation, it was something. I mean, even the word and the idea of meditation was so opposite from anything I had learned growing up in the Midwest in Indiana. So I was completely fascinated by it, as I am fascinated by quirks and by things that are unique. So I really dug in there, and what that looked like for me was literally meditating between 6 to 8 hours a day for the first 6 months that I learned meditation. So I really grasped onto something, with this lifestyle. So even by the time that I had been diagnosed with the brain tumor, 8 years later, when I was 29, I had already been meditating pretty solidly for about 8 years prior to that time. So I came to know my identity on soul level beyond the physical world from the time that I spent in that dedicated space, with myself, soul to soul, with God, creator, whatever you may refer to, your higher power. I think that is, for me, a very essential and crucial part of my own spiritual awakening and development.
Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit more because like you said, your signature thing and how you and I were first introduced is I got to see you speak the Flip Your Flaws talk and hear your story. So you said, you had this moment where you got maybe a little confused and you almost lost yourself. So what was it that helped you make that shift from being almost a little bit lost to realizing that the gift that you had been given in that facial paralysis so that you can now use that as a teaching tool for other women?
Yeah. So for me, it was actually really simple, but it doesn't mean that it was easy. The concept was simple, but the experience of it was one of the most challenging things that I've ever done in my life. Um, I went into the brain surgery kind of having an intuition that I would not come out the same person. It was, I had an acoustic neuroma, and that's not a very common term to hear for people. So I'll just share that, ironically, especially after what I just shared about meditation, acoustic neuromas are actually very close to the brainstem, kind of energetically the seat of the soul, if you will, from like a chakra level in your body. And I knew that because the surgery was happening in that area, there were already, a lot of things that I knew that I would wake up to. Not having a balance nerve in my head, I knew that I would be entirely deaf in the right ear. Just for those reasons, I knew that my life would shift pretty dramatically. Um, but what I didn't know, of course, is that I was going to wake up to the facial paralysis. So I think when I found out that my facial nerve, basically what happened was the only thing holding together the facial nerve was my tumor. The tumor had been there for almost 15 years. So it kind of the whole ecology of my facial nerve was wrapped up in the tumor. So in order to remove the tumor at all, my facial nerve just fell apart. So when I woke up to that, it was like horrible. I really can't even describe what you feel when you realize that your whole head and eyes completely bandage up, and your doctor comes over and gives you a mirror, and you literally don't look like the same person that you've known yourself to be for 30 years. Like, I truly looked like a completely different person. And something inside of myself kind of defaulted to, okay, well, you kind of knew going into this that there was an intuition that you were going to be a different person. And how can I kind of sit with that right now, and the understanding that indeed I am to some degree going to be a different person. And if I am going to be a different person, how am I going to show up to be the best version of that new person? So that really was my foundational question that I asked myself. And from there, I really wielded quite a bit of ambition. And at this point in my journey, because I had been practicing meditation for so long, I was actually an energy healer when I went into the surgery. So I had a professional practice where I was doing Reiki work and NLP and hypnosis with clients. I had seen so many instances that miracles are possible that in all of my ambition, I just had to invoke all of those moments where I had seen miracles happen and really ask myself the question, if I know that it's possible for other people to experience miracles, and I've even experienced minor ones within myself, could it be even 1% possible that there would be a miracle that could be created with my face? So that's really what it was, this process of deep inquiry, ambition and persistence, with wanting to create my own best healing, and also a really great amount of surrender.
I love so Brie and I are doing this interview separately, which is the first time we've ever done an interview separately. And usually we have some form of communication to talk about, what we're asking next. So there's no awkward pause. And so because Brie and I are both in our separate closets, we have a little chat situation going on so we can be on the same page of what we're going to ask Renee next. And so I'm like, Brie, like, what should we talk about next? And Brie's response, I don't know, miracles and unicorns.
Oh, that's so amazing. Well, unicorns are miracles and miracles are unicorns, aren't they?
Oh, I love that.
I think you bring up something really great there because, there is that choice point that I think all of us come to amidst really great challenges where it really serves us to ask, do we want to be extraordinary within this situation? And if I were to show up as the unicorn, if I were to show up as the miracle, how can I visualize the outcome of that extraordinary life? And that's really what I had to do, with healing my face. I had 0% chance of recovery with my facial nerve. This was a very physical thing. But I employed, techniques that I had learned before with visualization and with energy healing, and within a 6-month time period, which was also scientifically impossible to, quote, grow a facial nerve back together within 6 months. But you know what? It happened because the unicorn energy got wielded through the
That's
process.
amazing.
Now, so and for me, I will say, luckily for me, I wouldn't have said this. Gosh, this surgery was like 12 years. Oh my, no, even longer than that. Almost 12 years ago is when the surgery was. At the time, I wouldn't have said that all of that was probably happening for my highest and best good when it didn't heal 100%. So basically, I got around like 60% healing with my facial nerve. And I still have a little bit of injury, particularly with one of my eyes. And I was really upset about that for a while because I thought, like, what the heck? This miracle happened, but it didn't happen 100%.
Like God didn't give you exactly what you wanted.
Exactly. Like, I'm super stoked that I could say that a miracle happened, but I mean, come on, it didn't happen 100%. But it happened 111%, because I actually feel now that I look more like my true self than I probably even looked before I had the surgery. Because the truth is I am a very quirky, very deep, very complex woman. And I think I wear that now also on the outside. So I've learned to develop this relationship, between my inner and outer. And I feel so confident now at age 42. By the way, ladies, like a part of this maturity process, a little bit of it also has to do with age. Even if one does come in as an old soul, I've always been an old soul, but let me tell you, when you hit 40 and like beyond, there is just this, this like, that
That
comes
is amazing.
We were just
through. So, the aging process really helps.
I was just talking to a girlfriend last night at one of our dinner parties, and there were two younger girls at our dinner party last night who were like 21, 22, and they were like, "Oh, you're 45," and they kind of had this like incredulous look on their faces, and she said to them, they were like, "Oh, do you feel old?" It was very cute and it was very innocent. And she said, "If there is any woman that ever tells you anything other than the fact that we get better with age, they're full of shit and they're lying."
Yes, totally.
Yeah, we have this glamorized idea that like college is the best time of our lives. And I'm like,
Yes.
I have not found that to be true. For me, every year of my life gets better and better.
I agree with you, sister. I can't, I'm looking forward to 50, 60, actually probably most looking forward to my 70s and 80s, just because I think that there is just undeniable wisdom that becomes you, if that's what you're pursuing and if that's, what you allow. So gosh, I feel like there was something else that I was going to share. What was your original question? Because I feel like there was another piece I wanted to.
It was just, it wasn't even a question. It was miracles and unicorns.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go then.
Well, but I would love to dive a little bit into this miraculousness and miracles. And like, let's talk about like, what does that even mean? Like, what are miracles and how can we live a miraculous life?
I think a definition of a miracle is going to be totally different for any person, but I think that it really, it lives in the unexpected. There always seems to be some sort of surprise element and unexpected element that happens with a miracle, and also accompanied by great joy and joy, enthusiasm, and a feeling like the impossible happened. For me, the miracle with my face healing, for that particular one, really lied in that something that was not scientifically possible was able to change and transmute itself and create an entire new life. Like my facial nerve literally did grow itself back together, albeit, as I've said before, not 100%, but when you go from 0 to 60%, that to me is a full-blown, scientific miracle. I'll share with you another miracle right now that no one knows, but a lot of people are going to know whenever I share it right now, is that I'm pregnant. And
wait. You are literally our second person this season to share a pregnancy announcement on Be Amplified, the podcast. Yay!
That's because being pregnant is amplified.
Kira,
that's the ultimate amplification. I'm almost 43, sister. So I think, I have not been in fertility practices. I have not been trying. Like, this was literally like some major fertility in action, and I'm almost 43, and there are so many women that are in their early 30s that think that getting pregnant is going to be challenging, and then you get into the mid and in the late 30s and it's like, no, I'm too old, I'm not going to be, I really want to bust all the myths around that and just carry an extremely grateful pregnancy. I'm at the very beginning. I'm only about 7 weeks right now. I actually have not even had my ultrasound done yet. I did have a miscarriage almost exactly 1 year ago during my first pregnancy. But even during that experience, for me, I created something called Flip Your Fertility after I had the miscarriage, because I felt, and I still feel like this to this day, that pregnancy is always a miracle. always, always, always a miracle. And at the very least, you have an opportunity as a woman for very beautiful, open heart and womb and creative healing when you get pregnant. And if you don't carry it to term, then that is the gift. You have a heart activation and a womb activation. If you carry to term and actually end up having children, then of course there are various other gifts that come from that. But I think there's a real opportunity to even flip and create a miracle mindset around, pregnancy itself. Don't you?
Yeah, and I love that you talk about your miscarriage so openly and so beautifully, because I feel like this is something that women are constantly experience, and no one
Yes.
talks about miscarriage. No one talks that they have it. No one talks about that journey, and so it feels very alienating.
Yeah.
I'm sure, because I also have never had a miscarriage or ever been pregnant, but I can imagine it feels alienating for women to feel like they're
Yeah.
carrying that burden by themselves.
You bring up a really good point, and I think this really ties in to some of the things that we're talking about in the beginning of the conversation, which is women's identity being attached to things in the external world. And this idea of, well, okay, if I had a miscarriage, then it means that there's something wrong with me. It means that, I'm not fertile enough, I'm not good enough, there's something that's wrong with me, when actually, in fact, at least 40% of women miscarry. Like this, I mean, these are actual, real numbers. And I mean, is it really possible that, all of us have, this 40% of us just are doomed and we just have something wrong with us? No. I mean, as we mentioned, pregnancy is a miracle. And there is also the life of another being that is co-creating, this whole experience. So, there's a lot of complexity around pregnancy, but I just really invite women, if they are on the journey right now, or, going into or wanting to experience the journey of pregnancy, to just be very mindful that it is a divine, it is a magical process, and you really need to focus on yourself as a woman in your resilience and your strength, and just be very, very surrendered to the process that's happening without fully tying in your own identity and sense of worth into the process.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing about this. I know it, like Thais said, it can be kind of a taboo, maybe difficult subject for some women. So thank you. Um,
Oh, you're welcome.
and we are going to take our conversation with Renee a little bit further. We're going to talk about more magic and more unicorns in our private Facebook group. So if you would like to join us there, you can go to beamplified.community. That's HTTP beamplified.community. There's no .com after it. Come join us there and hear Renee's extended cut version. And Renee, why don't you tell us where people can find you and continue to follow your beautiful magical journey?
Oh, sure. So, as mentioned at the top of the show, I do own a production company with my soulmate partner, Akira, and we are raremedia.tv. And then my own website is reneearea.com, which I'm sure that it will probably be posted here someplace. I would say the best place to really interact with me is on Facebook and Instagram, also under Renee Area.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Renee. We have such a good time with you. Thank you for sharing
Thank you,
your
ladies.
beautiful announcement. And
Thank you for talking to me from the closet as I come out of the closet.
We love our womb closet. This is our creative incubator of magic. So for those of you that are listening and you want to check out more of us, you are welcome to find us on all the socials at not at Be Amplified. That is a lie. That is not our socials. It's at The Amplify Co. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on all of the places because this is how we do business. So we love you, Renee. Thank you for having us, and we're excited to get more of you in our extended
Love
cut.
you.